Budu Saranai, the International Dhamma Program, is conducting the Il Full Moon Poya Day Dhamma program today. The Venerable Theros, our committee members, special invitees, Dhamma friends, both local and overseas. Today, the topic is signless or animita, which will be conducted by Venerable Panadure Chandaratna Thero, the Deputy Abbot of the Mitrikala Nisarana Vanaya Monastery. Today is Il Full Moon Poya Day, and there are a few events I thought that I should mention here. One, of course, was the important event of passing away of one of the chief disciples of Lord Buddha, Arahat Sariputta. And with the permission of the Buddha, he traveled with a retinue of bhikkhus to the house of his birth. While he was there, he succeeded in converting his mother, Rupasari, who was a Brahmin faith to Buddhism. He entered Nirvana on full moon Poya Day. It was also on full moon Poya Day, Lord Buddha sent out his first missionaries, 60 disciples, to the four corners of the country to preach the Dhamma, that is pristine. This was how the message of Dhamma came to be preached in neighboring countries as well as around the globe. Then also the prediction of the next Maitreya Buddha, the last 5 Buddhas to walk on this earth. In the present day, I think the most important thing for our Sri Lankan devotees is, of course, the end of the Vas retreat, and where we have the Katina Chivara Puja. I think almost everyone would have participated, but this year, most of the temples had to advance the Katina Pinkama due to the elections that were held on the 14th. So I'm sure that the Katina Chivara Puja, which is of very great significance and brings merit to the ones who undertake this Katina Chivara Puja, is one that is highly regarded and respected by all Buddhists in Sri Lanka. Now today, as I said, we have a very erudite Buddhist monk who will be going to preach this Dhamma talk. Venerable Panadure Chandaratna Thero is a Theravada Buddhist monk for nearly 1.5 decades. Is currently the deputy abbot of the Nisarana Vanaya Monastery. He has been teaching meditation for about a decade. Prior to ordination, was an electrical engineer and pursued further training and education in computer science. Venerable Chandaratna teaches meditation in Sri Lanka and several foreign countries, and is a much sought after teacher in mindfulness and meditation. His special skill is to bring the Buddha's teachings and meditation techniques understandable by everyone with exceptional lucidity. The motto of Nisarana Vanaya, in short, is realizing Nibbana in this very life. I think we must also, with respect, remember the most venerable Uda Iriyagama Dhammajiva Mahathero, the abbot and chief preceptor of the monastery. I have now, with respect, I now invite Venerable Chandaratna Thero to deliver Pansil and thereafter to deliver the Dhamma talk. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah, okay, you may recite Namo Tassa 3 times.
Namo Dassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Dassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Dassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi.
Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi.
Dhammam saranam gacchāmi.
Dhammang saranang gacchāmi.
Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi.
Sanghang saranang gacchāmi.
Yampi Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi.
Yampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi.
Dhammam saranam gacchāmi.
Yampi Dhammang saranang gacchāmi.
Yampi Sangham saranam gacchāmi.
Yampi Sanghang saranang gacchāmi.
Yampi Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi.
Yampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi.
Yampi Dhammam saranam gacchāmi.
Yampi Sanghang saranang gacchāmi.
Yampi Sangham saranam gacchāmi.
Yampi Sanghang saranang gacchāmi.
Aranagamanaṃ sampunnaṃ.
Bante
Antipātā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
panatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Nādāna veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Adinādāna viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Nesu miccācārā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Kāmesu miccācāra viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sāvādā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Savādā viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Amere majjapamā daṭṭhānā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Ramire majjapamā daṭṭhāna viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Dharanena saddhiṃ pañcasīlaṃ dhammaṃ sādhukaṃ surakkhitāṃ katvā appamādena sampādē tabbang. Okay, dear venerables and Dhamma friends, as Professor pointed out, we are going to discuss on the signless. May I share my screen so that you can get a little idea about the whole thing?
Yes,
So,
Venerable.
yeah. So actually, signless or animitta is something sometimes you might have heard. And actually here I am trying to give you a kind of a glimpse of the whole process in one area of the Vipassana practice. Actually, Buddha delivers his teaching based on certain areas. Sometimes he discusses our whole experience based on the 5 aggregates, sometimes based on elements, sometimes based on, say, sense bases. So likewise, so-called person and the personal experience, he like to explain in terms of this kind of very interesting areas. So I have taken here from the point of 5 aggregates. So first stage is actually to come up with some thorough understanding of the 5 aggregates, which I'm not going to cover the whole detail here, but just to give you a glimpse of what I'm trying to tell. So I'm referring certain areas of the Satipatthana Sutta. So they are in the Dhammanupassana. Buddha simply say iti rupang, iti vedana, iti sanya, iti sankhara, iti viññānam. So likewise, he is giving a kind of a basis to the 5 aggregates in the Kanda Pabba of the Dhammanupassana. Probably you have heard about it. And there the idea is, so we need to get into the area of the aggregates where we are typically is the typical mundane world, where we are not talking about the aggregates, rather we are talking about the people and the various things, various objects. This is why actually this is how we are introduced to the world. Say, for example, once you are born to the world, so your mother you to the world, telling, okay, this is your mother, this is your father, this is your doll, this is your bat. So likewise, various different kinds of objects are introduced to us, and similarly, various kinds of people are introduced to us. So this is how we start knowing the world, starting with various people and knowing the world with various objects. So this is how we are introduced. And then as we are going to the kindergarten, then further different colors are introduced, different shapes are introduced, many further people are introduced. Okay, now we are getting to our siblings, maybe our colleagues, our elders, maybe to the teachers. So now we are expanding our knowledge, but more into the conventional level. So, and more information are being gathered, and assume now we are going to the college, and further subjects are introduced, and many further information are introduced, and we start learning many subjects, understanding a lot of conventional stuff, filling our mind with conventional stuff. And maybe if you are selected to the university, you are further and further filling your mind with so many information, gathering information, and which is filled with so much of perception, so much of conventional theoretical stuff. And ultimately, what we end up with is a fairly conventionally stuffed mind. So you have now a mind which is filled with so much of perceptions, filled with so much of science, filled with so much of marks, and the mind is fairly occupied. So this is what we have ultimately after we go through this typical social experience. And now we can get into the Buddha's teaching. Now this is how we are anyway, as a worldly being, we coming and introduced into the world, and ultimately we are growing our mind with so many other stuff. And later, now we are introduced to the Buddhism or the Buddha's teaching. And there he is trying to give us a different perspective to our life, telling this is, rather than telling there are objects or there are people, so he simply say, okay, there are 5 aggregates. Sometimes he say there are 6 elements. Sometimes he say there are 18 elements. Sometimes he say there are 6 sense bases operating with their corresponding external objects. So likewise, now we are introduced to a different arena, which is quite different from where we were. Actually, we were thinking there is a person, so-called a person. There is, here I am, and there are my parents, there are my children, there are my husband, wife, etc., etc. And then this is my world, this is my country, these are my political parties. So all so much of information were there, but simply Buddha come and say, okay, there are 5 aggregates. So actually getting to these 5 aggregates also not an easy task. One can actually superficially understand it from a book. Okay, there are 5 aggregates, there are 5 khandhas, upadana khandha, form clinging aggregate, vedana upadana khandha, that is the feeling clinging aggregate, and then the sanya upadana khandha, that is the, say, what we call the perceptions clinging aggregate, then the formations clinging aggregate, that is the sankhara upadana khandha, and then actually the Vijnana Upadana Khandha, that's the consciousness clinging aggregate. So these things are, most of you may be familiar. So I'm just giving a summary of the things. But anyway, theoretical understanding of these 5 aggregates is not what we are looking for. Actually, we are looking for some experiential understanding of the 5 aggregates. Now, for you to experientially understand them, so we need certain other skills to be developed. One skill is the mindfulness. Another skill is the clear comprehension. And then we need to balance the effort. So once you have such kind of skills developed, then probably you are in a position to get on to the touch or direct touch to the aggregates. Because so far, as I just mentioned at the beginning, so we were introduced to a kind of an artificial, mind-made, conventional level, a conceptual world, but now we are stepping into a different type of understanding. So that is purely based on mindfulness and concentration, and we are maintaining a balanced effort so that we are able to aware of the experience. So rather than me being a person and going through kind of an experience, now we are trying to experience what is going on. So different way of looking at things. So now there is a body, and now we are looking at the body. So there is a mind, now we are looking at the mind. So there's a kind of an objective way of looking at things. You have changed or shifted your perspective. Now, in this way of looking at the things, now you are able to step back and watch what's really going on. So rather than you are interfering the process, you allow the process to unfold, and now you are able to understand it from an unbiased way. Say, for example, various bodily postures are there. Now you are able to experience as a third person. There are various bodily processes are there, like breathing, maybe walking, maybe sitting, maybe lying down, maybe rising and falling of the abdomen, maybe blood circulation, maybe heart vibration, maybe various bodily aches and pains. Now, all of these experiences you are able to look at from a different angle. From a direct touch, you are able to look at. And rather than saying it belongs to me or this is me, this is I am, now you are able to step back and look at from a different angle. So that is very, very important. So this is what we do at the first stage of our mindfulness practice at the Satipatthana level, where you being mindful. And once you establish mindfulness, you are able to maintain a very calm, relaxed, focused attention, and you are able to experience the operation of the Rupakkanda, iti rupang. Now we come to the statement, okay, iti rupang. There is a body, there is a physical experience. And we are actually taking the sample of this whole very colossal kind of a form aggregate. We are taking a sample of the body, and that sample we are making use to develop the amount of understanding. Now we are in direct touch with the body. Iti rupang. This is how we understand. So that also Buddha further simplify, telling it consists of four main elements: the earth element, water element, and then the air element, and the uh, heat element. So likewise, we are further and further drilling down, calming down, relaxing, and then touching this what we call the so-called elements. Now the Rupa part, the form aggregate, is able to touch, able to experience, and you are in direct contact with this form element, we can say. So same approach actually we can take the development of mindfulness, and then kind of connecting with the feeling aggregate. So different feelings are there. There are pleasurable feelings, there are painful feelings, there are equanimous feelings, and then you are able to very much directly touch the feelings as well. So various feelings are arising, and you are able to recognize them. Various perceptions and sankhara, the various mental formations and different consciousness. Actually, this is part of a little advanced area of the Chittanupassana and Dhammanupassana. Not immediately you are able to get some thorough or clear understanding about the sanya, sankhara, and vijnana. Anyway, suppose you get a certain understanding of the form aggregate, certain understanding of the feeling aggregate. Those are straightforward. And then, interesting thing is, assume that you are able to directly experience the form aggregate. And that also Buddha drills down to four elements, as I mentioned. And there also you are trying to recognize the hardness, softness, roughness, smoothness, heaviness, lightness. So they are the characteristics of the earth element. And the fluidity and the cohesion, those are the characteristics of the water element. And then what we call heat, the temperature, coolness, and the hot. So that is the characteristics of the heat element. And the vibrations, movements, those are the characteristics of the air elements. Now, basically, we are introduced to the elements. And so elements are here introducing to the form aggregate. And form aggregate, ultimately, we are dealing with the elements. Suppose now, if we come into the Vedana, various feelings, so you can recognize pleasurable feelings, you can recognize painful feelings, you can recognize equanimous feelings. So basically, the idea is you are able to look at them objective. It is not I am suffering, it is not that I am going through pleasure. Rather, there is a painful feeling, there is a pleasurable feeling, there is an equanimous feeling. So likewise, so your approach has drastically changed. Now you are looking at them objectively. So this is what actually we need to understand. At one stage of Vipassana, there you are introduced to a very objective way of looking at things. So you become a kind of a mere observer. You're not interrupting the process, interfering in the process. Rather, the process is actually happening, but you have the chance to look at it properly, look at it objectively. And as you are moving forward further, now you are able to understand some subtle behavior of this maybe elements. And if you are looking at the feelings, you can further understand their common behavior. So how these feelings are coming to being and then existing for a while and ultimately disappear. Similarly, how different elements are coming to being and existing for a while and ultimately disappear. And if we step into the mental area, so assume that there are thoughts available, maybe lustful thoughts, painful, maybe thoughts of ill will, maybe thoughts of jealousy, and different kinds of thoughts are there. Those can be wholesome thoughts, those can be unwholesome thoughts. Anyway, they also show some interesting characteristics which are quite common. They also arise and change for a while and ultimately disappear. So the yogi, the practitioner has the capacity to look at them properly because he has developed fair amount of mindfulness, developed fair amount of focused attention. And again, he is able to maintain the what we call the effort at a proper dose, at a proper level. If you increase too much effort, then actually you can't do it because your mind become restless. But if you are not introducing enough effort, then you can't do it properly. Probably you might feel lethargic or you might feel drowsy. So the balancing of the faculties is very, very important. So as you are practicing it, then you feel comfortable in this observing process. And various phenomena are there. There may be bodily phenomena, there may be various feelings and different thoughts. Still, you are able to look at them properly, look at them objectively. So actually, the whole Vipassana process I am here summarizing just to introduce you to the signless area. Now, suppose you are able to understand these different aggregates and all these subtle characteristics of the form aggregate based on the elements, maybe the feeling aggregates based on different types of different types of feelings, and then the formations aggregate from different types of thoughts, and maybe perceptions, different kinds of signs appearing in your mind. And I'll come into the Vijnana later. Now, suppose now you are practicing Vipassana at that level. So different phenomena are coming and going, arising and passing away, arising and passing away. So you are coming to another level because your mindfulness is fairly sharpened now and the concentration is also sharpened and you are maintaining proper balance of the effort. As a result of that, various characteristics of these phenomena are now very much evident to you, available to you, retrieved to you. And as I mentioned, you understand certain characteristics which are common. So all these different conditioned phenomena show certain characteristics, that is the beginning, changing, and ultimately disappearing. So that is a common characteristic. And later you understand, so they are coming to being from almost like from nothing. There was no any thought, but now there is a thought. Similarly, there was no pleasurable feeling, but now there is a beginning of a pleasurable feeling. There was no any hardness, but now you can experience hardness. So likewise, so from nothing, there is a beginning of something. But that doesn't last for a long time. It also disappears very quickly, rapidly, and quick passing away is also there. So this is a kind of a common another understanding that the yogi may go through. Okay, quick arising and passing away. That is common to all different kinds of forms. That is the form aggregate. It is common to different feelings. It is common to various thoughts. And even to the sanya, various perceptions. Now what happened? So you understand how quickly they are coming and going, how quickly they are arising and passing away. And that is an interesting change in your perception now, because previously you had different types of phenomena. Say different elements were there, earth element, water element, air element, fire element. So different elements were there. And feelings also similar. You have experienced pleasurable feelings, painful feelings, equanimous feelings. If you look at the mind, there may be happiness, there may be little unhappiness. So feelings are also different. And the thoughts are also different types of thoughts were there. But as you continue in this process of observation, now there's an interesting shift happen. So you come to a level where you can't differentiate. Now, as for example, you previously had different types of feelings, but later you come to a level, okay, now certain feelings are there, but you can't name them. You can't recognize whether it is a pleasurable feeling or painful feeling or equanimous feeling. You can't differentiate because they are very quickly coming and going. Similarly, if you look at the elements, previously you were able to understand distinctly, okay, this is this type of element, this is the earth element, this is the air element. So likewise, you are able to distinctly recognize them. But later you come to a stage, okay, now you can't recognize them. So some kind of a process is there, but you can't name it, you can't label it, you can't recognize it. What type of element which is happening, you can't recognize. And if you come to the Chittanupassana level, different thoughts were there. Previously, you were able to recognize, you were able to name it. But now thoughts are coming and going very quickly, but you can't name them. And sometimes you might feel, okay, there is something wrong happening because I might have lost mindfulness, I might have lost maybe concentration. So this is the kind of wrong, mistaken views that we might think because of this change. But anyway, what is happening is we are losing the ability to pick the signs. Now we are coming to the signs, actually. Actually, the whole experience what we are going through is a kind of a dealing with the signs. Say, for example, when you are looking at your father, for example. So how are you differentiate your father with other people, other men? And when you are recognizing your mother, how are you recognizing your mother from other women? Suppose you are trying to recognize your daughter, your son. So among many other children, how are you recognizing your son or daughter? So likewise, so among many, how are we recognizing a certain person, a certain object? So that all depends on the signs, what we call the nimitta. So certain characteristics were there, certain nimittas are there, different maybe colors are there, shapes are there. So those are the little marks, little signs, which are helpful for us to recognize a certain person, to distinctly recognize a certain person, distinctly recognize certain object. So similarly, now if we come back to the aggregates, so the form aggregate, so different elements. So different elements are also showing their distinct characteristics, distinct marks. Using them, you are able to recognize them. Oh, this is the earth element. This is the air element. So likewise, you are able to recognize them. Feelings are also similar. So different feelings you are able to recognize through their tone, through their signs, through their marks. Similarly, the different thoughts. But interesting thing is, as you continue your practice, because of the quick rapidity of this progress, this process, you are unable to pick the signs. Now you can't note, now you can't recognize what kind of feeling it is, what kind of a thought it is, what kind of a element it is. Now you are unable to recognize because the signs are somewhat blurred. Things are happening very, very quickly. Now the signs are very much like blurred. You can't pick the names, you can't pick the signs, you can't pick the kind of the colors or shapes, any of those. All are very much like blurred, everything like a kind of a mixture, what we call kind of a flux. Now, actually, till we have a lot of lust, we keep on adhering to things, we keep on grabbing things, holding things, grasping things, because we are doing kind of a what we call the nimitta karana. So not only we pick the signs, but these signs are further subjected to internal fabrications. Now, this is another interesting process, what is happening within our mind. Now, I have introduced to you to different signs, but not only the mind is capable of picking the signs, but once we pick that data, internally we do some modification. Say, for example, you are picking a sign of a woman, for example. So her shape, her body shape, her eyes, maybe skin color, maybe the hair color, all that's different say signs, marks, you are able to pick through your eyes. But not only that, internally you do certain further modification, further fabrication. All the further alterations are going on within your mind, what we call the sankarana. Various sanskarana, various different kinds of fabrications, modifications, preparations are going on within the mind. So that is influenced by lust, hatred, and delusion. Now the interesting thing is this. Now, say for example, if we ask a robot to pick the information, a certain sensor to pick the information, it only picks the programmed areas. Say, for example, a certain sensor is there to pick the color. It will only pick the color. A certain sensor is there to pick the temperature. It will only pick the temperature. Even sometimes there are sensors to pick the, say, the what we call the face recognition. So it may be recognize the face. Now, all the devices nowadays, maybe mobile devices, are having the fingerprint. So you are able to recognize the finger marks, and it will recognize only the fingerprint. Nothing else. It doesn't do any fabrication. But interestingly, our mind do this fabrication part. It do further molding. It do further additions, subtractions, multiplications, and all different kinds of other interesting biases are introduced to the picture. This happens because of lust, hatred, and delusion. Rago ko also nimitta karano, doso nimitta karano, moho nimitta karano. So Buddha gives a very interesting area to this psychological changes happening within our mind after we grab that information. But what happened once we go through the process of vipassana? So we are developing certain kind of a capacity to have things as they truly are. Rather than conceptually adding things, now we have used concepts only to a very limited level, almost like no concepts. But we are very much like dealing with the direct experience. That also we are very careful not to do any our own additions. It's very, very unbiased kind of an observation. You are not supposed to interfere the process. You are not supposed to fabricate the process. Rather, you are keeping the things as they are without your judgments, without your additions, without your multiplications, without your alterations. You are trying to keep the things as they are. Very much like the raw data. Almost like a very scientific approach, actually, what we are trying to do in the Vipassana process. Without any scientific instrument, what you have is a very interesting mental capacity. You have the mindfulness, you have the concentration, and you are having proper balance of the faculties. And now you're doing your own experiment with an unbiased mind. So different phenomena are happening due to various causes, and you are maintaining that unbiased eye, how they are happening right now. Assume now you are able to maintain such very precise way of experiment. Now there may be a state, as I mentioned, now things are quickly happening, very quickly arising and passing away, very quickly arising and passing away. So what happened at that level? So when things are happening in a very rapid succession, you are unable to record the sign. You are unable to pick the sign because so fast, so rapid, things are happening very rapidly. So the interesting thing is you are getting to the very precise understanding of the anicca, the impermanence. So things are happening very, very quickly arising and passing away, quick arising and passing away. You can't record it. You can't know the name. You can't know the color. You can't know the shape. You can't know the tone. Things are happening at very instantaneous level, extremely transient. Now you are unable to record the signs. Now your raga dosa moha unable to put its stuff. Raga dosa moha is now very much like subsided, because instead of raga dosa moha, you have viraga, vita dosa and vita moha, we can say. You have certain dispassion towards the whole process. And similarly, you have certain non-ill will towards the process. And again, you have some kind of a understanding about the process. So far, we are developing certain amount of understanding because things are arising and passing away. And that understanding is a fairly important understanding in the Vipassana. And so that knowledge, arising and passing away knowledge, what we call as Udayabhaya. So that understanding is now growing in your mind. Now there's an interesting incident happen at another level. So mind stops picking the signs. Previously, we are not only picking the signs, gathering the signs, we do further manipulations into the signs. We are adding our own likes and dislikes into the picture. That is what we are experiencing. It's a kind of an entirely distorted picture, kind of a distorted experience ultimately we are having. Not the exact, precise, perfect kind of a picture, rather entirely distorted picture what we are experiencing. But we think, okay, this is what the correct picture, but a fair influence have done through our psychological interference. So we interfere to the process. But now, once you are going through this kind of a, say, Vipassana process, you are maintaining a very careful attention without interfering, without adding your own judgments, allowing the process to naturally unfold so that you are able to understand the things as they truly are. Now, things are also happening very rapidly. So you feel a little dispassionate about the process because you can't find any beauty there. Because things are quickly arising and passing away. You can't name it, you can't label it, you can't taste it. Everything appears like a flux. So in a flux, what is the beauty? So you can't taste it. So you feel a little dispassionate about the whole thing. And ultimately, you give up. So the mind can't hold things now. So far, mind is holding things, grasping things. But now, mind is unable to hold things. Mind is unable to grasp things. Now, in order to grasp things, hold things, signs are a must. Without signs, without marks, you can't pick things. You can't know things, or you can't recognize at a name. Now, you are coming to an area where the mind become unable to pick the signs. Now, the interesting thing here, according to Dhamma, this is called, you are stepping into the Animitta Vimokka Mukha, a kind of open into the signless state. So far, we were stuck in with the signs, but now we are stepping into the signless state. So this also sometimes we can't immediately trace because it's a very momentary experience. So we have to practice it again and again. So then the same result will happen quickly again and again. Say you are coming to the kind of a Vipassana process, at one level, you feel kind of a jerk. So your mind become kind of blank. Next time also you practice, again your mind become very much like a blank state. Nothing is there. So you feel little, even sometimes people get frightened. But again and again, when you are going through this whole practice, there you are stepping into this signless state, what we call the Animitta Vimokka Mukha. So your mind being open now, rather than hindered, rather than very much like restricted. So your mind become open and momentarily very much like unestablished. Now, advice here is to repeat the process. You do the practice further. Continue your practice. So as you continue your practice, more and more, now you are able to maintain that signless state for a while. Now we are getting to the Animitta Samadhi state. So this area. So previously, what we had is a very momentary experience of the signless, almost like unnoticeable. But as you continue your practice, so that signless state become somewhat persisting, existing for a while. Now you feel that jerk for a while, not only a limited moment, but maybe 2 moments, 3 moments, 5 moments, 10 moments, several seconds, say 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes. So likewise, so your mind stops picking the signs for 1 minute. So this is a very interesting experience. The yogis may go through their vipassana life where they are actually, they came through picking the signs. They were able to recognize different feelings, different thoughts, maybe different elements. But now you are at a level where the mind is almost like no object. And mind is now getting very much like spacious. Previously, your mind is utterly cluttered. So much of information, so much of nowadays, say, for example, now we are going through the election, and almost most of the people, their mind is filled with a lot of information. Maybe about the candidates, maybe about the parties, and they may be really happy or some may be unhappy. So minds are filled with a lot of information. If you like that politics, and probably your mind is utterly cluttered with a lot of information. No space at all. You are filled with so much of things. Say, for example, you are into the, say, novels, stories. Then your mind is filled with that much of information. So likewise, depending on our interest, our minds are fairly up to the full brim, full capacity, filled with so much of information. But interestingly, as we go through the practice, you may be able to calm down the mind, relax the mind, reduce the thinking as a result of the mindfulness practice. And later, as you touch into this signless state, your mind almost become kind of a blank. There's a kind of a radical change happening in the mind. Previously, you had a utterly messed mind or cluttered mind, but now you have a fairly spacious mind. It has a lot of space. Nothing is there. Now, advice is to develop it. Now you develop that animitta state, what we call the animitta samadhi, signless concentration, for a while. Say 5 minutes, you are able to maintain that. 10 minutes, you are able to maintain. 20 minutes, you are able to maintain. 30 minutes, you are able to maintain. So likewise, you develop this animitta samadhi now. But interestingly, Buddha give a very drastic instruction here, and he says, amongst this animitta samadhi, also a conditioned phenomena. You should not attach to it. You should reflect it. You should know this is also impermanent. This is also unsatisfactory. And this is also prepared. Don't think it is a completely unconditioned. So you have to exert fair amount of effort to step into the animitta samadhi. You need to develop certain amount of wisdom to step into this animitta samadhi. So that is also dependent. It is not an entirely independent state. This is also a dependent state. So Buddha actually very cleverly cut off our extraordinary craving towards this animitta samadhi. Because sometimes, once the vipassana yogis step into this kind of an area, is quite interesting and eye-opening kind of an area. So they might feel over-enthusiastic about it. They might feel overwhelmed by it. They may start even loving, attaching to this animitta samadhi. That's also something that we need to understand. So Buddha very cleverly mentioned, okay, remember, this is also impermanent. This is also conditioned. And you might even lose it. You can't trust even this state. Further, you need to develop it now, but recognizing various defilements. The interesting part is here you are coming to another area, how this signless state being broken. So what are the reasons, what are the causes to lose this signless state? How it becomes impermanent? So that is where you understand, okay, certain defilements are still influencing the mind. So as a result of lust, again, mind go and picks the signs, so you lose the signless state. As a result of ill will, you again pick the sign, again you lose the signless state. As a result of this kind of the delusion, you again prepare a self, you again prepare a man, woman, this and that, again you lose the signless state and you start picking the signs. So the main culprit is now the defilements. Now you understand the defilements. Now the interesting area is the purification of the mind. So it is not that we are trying to maintain Animitta Samadhi for hours, rather we use it as a reference to understand different defilements. So defilements are, very tricky. Sometimes they are quite easy to understand. Sometimes it is very tricky and very difficult to understand. They even trick you. You think that you are free of defilements or you are able to overcome a certain defilement, but at another level, it will overcome you. It will overpower you, overwhelm you. So the understanding of the defilements is also a very crucial area. But the interesting advantage the yogi gets through signless state is that the signless state makes the mind fairly pure. And as a result of that, even the subtle defilements is easily noticeable. Just to give a simple simile, assume that you have a kind of a cloth which is completely dirty, filled with so much of dirt, and then you can't recognize a subtle dirt particle because it's a utterly dirty cloth. But now suppose you have a completely white cloth. Now even a mosquito, once it is landing on say, this white cloth, you can easily notice it because the background is white. So similarly, when one develops the Animitta Samadhi, so the mind becomes fairly pure, fairly spacious, and fairly even enhanced with the wisdom. You have a clear comprehension. Now, easily you can notice the defilement. So therefore, Buddha recommend Animitta state to recognize subtle defilements. For example, in the Sutta Nipata, Rahula Sutta, Buddha particularly advised Venerable Rahula, Animittancha bhavehi mana anusaya mujjaha. You know that the mana anusaya, mana, the conceit, it's a very, very subtle defilement. And it will last even till the arahanthood. You can't overcome mana, the conceit, even when one becomes a sotapan, even one becomes a sakadagami, even one becomes an anagami, still the conceit continues. But Buddha gives a very interesting solution through the Animitta. Okay, you got to use Animitta, the signless state, to recognize the conceit, the operation of the conceit. How, assume that you are dealing with someone, you are moving with someone. So are you measuring or comparing yourself with the other person? Are you making a self during your conversation, during your gathering, during your discussion? Are you making a self? Are you comparing yourself with another person? Now, this is very tricky. Typically, what happens is we automatically do it and we become a victim of that whole process. We can't even trace it. We have automatically, very quickly became a victim of that whole comparison process. So I am good, I am better than you, I am superior to you, or I am equal to you, I am inferior to you. So very instantaneously, this comparison happens when we are talking with another person. So I'm always operating as a separate individual, and in front of me is another individual, and I am better than you. I am equal to you, I am inferior to you. So this comparison and individuation happens almost like instantaneously. But when one has this signless state fairly developed, now that is become very much like the background of the mind. So even a subtle such comparison is able to trace. That's a very interesting advantage one can take from the signless state. Now, as you further use this signless state often to understand what we call the defilements, now defilements power become weaker and weaker. Defilements power become weaker and weaker. Now, the interesting advantage to you is that you don't need a very drastic or very critical vipassana process to step into the signless state now. Now, probably you can remember how much time I have spent to explain you all these theories and then the kind of a stepping certain areas of the vipassana, because this is necessary for you to step into animitta, the signless state. But now, once the defilements are weakened and the signless state become fairly established, now you don't need much effort to step into signless state. You can quickly step into signless state even without vipassana. So that's a very interesting area. Very much like now, almost like we are practicing samatha meditation. Previously, so far, I was talking utter vipassana. But now, very much like a kind of a samatha process. You are quickly stepping into signless state and you are very much like maintaining it. You don't need much vipassana practice now. It doesn't mean that you don't need vipassana at all. Rather, you need the certain characteristics of vipassana or the vipassana contemplations only when your mind again start picking the signs. Only when again your mind get trapped, again get tangled. Otherwise, you can simply maintain that equanimous mind, untangled mind, unestablished mind, fairly pure type of consciousness you can maintain. Nothing much to do. Almost like a very pleasant samatha state. Almost like a arupa jhana. So very interesting result how Buddha has taken us from a very strong type of vipassana approach, ultimately very much like ending up with a very simple samatha result. Animitta cheto vimutti. Now your mind is quite open, very relaxed, less defilements, and less signs in the mind. So mind is quite spacious, fairly pure, no stress. And it's a matter of maintaining such signless state. Now, you might get fulfilled only when one become an arahant. So the pristine form of the animitta cheto vimutti is very much like where one becomes an arahant, very much like merging of the panya vimutti. So you have the wisdom, either you become a panya vimutta, or the ubato bhaga vimutta. So basically, if one has the fair amount of samatha practice, it is coupled with the vipassana practice, one may attain an arahantship as the ubato bhaga vimutta. If one maintains the fairly vipassana approach through the wisdom, one may end up with the panya vimutta. So you can see we started with some basics, but now we are talking the arahantship. Now you can see what a kind of a spectrum is. This state is a very, very crucial area for us to understand. Very, very interesting area for us to understand in the vipassana. And as I mentioned, the crucial thing is to develop that arising and passing away knowledge. How quickly things are arising and passing away. How transient things are. So therefore, typically, this mentioned, so if you are able to understand that transience, the impermanence, anicca, so the door of the signless is open. The signless door will be open because you understand the impermanent nature, transient nature. And once it is open, you can step into the signless state, signless realm, if you like. And then you can further master it, understand various defilements, and slowly purify the mind. So this is how the signless state is quite interesting. theoretical to understand and again the practically to experience, and very, very important area, because the impermanence will lead to the understanding of the suffering, the dukkha. That may further lead to the understanding of the anatta, what we call the emptiness. So ultimately, actually, there may be a kind of a merging with the signless or the animita cheto vimutti with the sunyata cheto vimutti. So almost like they are coinciding with each other. So certain suttas are there, like in the Chula Sunyata Sutta. So Buddha introduced Animitta at the middle, but later end up with the Sunyata, the what we call the emptiness, liberation of the mind. So therefore, there is a kind of a fair overlapping between the Animitta Cheta Vimutti, Appanihita Cheta Vimutti, and the emptiness Cheta Vimutti. That's the Sunyata Cheta Vimutti. Once the things are happening, maybe according to the suttas. So these are very interesting areas for one to investigate, and fair amount of research may be possible in these areas. And suttas are giving a fair information about these things. And say, for example, in the Mahavedala Sutta, there's a very good conversation between Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahakottita about the signless state, signless Cheto Vimutti. And that's also interesting area to look at, and how he's actually asking the questions like how one can step into the signless state, what are the causes required, how one can maintain the signless state, what are the causes required. So likewise, very interesting direct questions are there in the Mahavedala Sutta related to the signless state. So you can see this is a very interesting area and something that we need to aspire to touch within this life. So with that note, I like to conclude my Dhamma sermon. Now, if you have any questions related to what I have presented, and I'm happily like to answer them.
Thank you very much, Venerable Thero. I think Venerable Thero has made it very simple and I think easy to understand. So if any of our Dhamma friends have any questions, you can kindly send it on Q&A so that then we will be able to answer them. Now, one question that Venerable Thero I was really looking at is really now in practice. Now, one thing is that if this is to be done, maybe one has to do it at a particular time or maybe get really involved in it. But supposing maybe thereafter that you are involved in other activities, in work and others, how could this be maybe brought in there so that maybe that the thinking power and the decision making and other powers could be much more done in a maybe much more better way. Is there any
No,
connection?
actually, yeah. Actually, it won't be a kind of a interference. Actually, you might go through some kind of a transition. Say, for example, you might at the beginning of the development of the mindfulness practice, you come to a level, the development of your memory. Your memory power will be improved because of the mindfulness practice. So that is something advantage of the mindfulness. But anyway, once you step into the signless state, you might even lose certain amount of memory. So that's an interesting phenomena. Sometimes yogis complain. So I can't remember my lecture note. I can't remember my, say, certain interesting schedules, what I have to maintain. So likewise, certain complaints are there from yogis. So once they get into this signless state, because mind does not want to record and it does not pick the signs. So this is something we need to bear, actually, the yogis. So understanding what's really going on in the mind. So previously, through the lust, hatred, and delusion, we were so interested about the phenomena. We are grasping things, we are holding things, we are accumulating things. That's why our mind has become very heavy, ultimately even stressed up. But now, as a result of the practice, slowly, mind is losing things, or mind is letting go of things. Now you feel kind of lighter internally. mentally you feel lighter. And now the disadvantage is sometimes you want to remember certain information, but mind is very much like rejecting it. Mind doesn't want to, but you are influencing the mind to record them, to store them, memorize them. But internally there's another operation through the vipassana. You want to very much like let go of things because things are impermanent. The mind has understood their impermanent nature. So there's a conflicting situations in the in this area. So I mean, say you are in an office and you want to record things, you want to memorize things, but once you come back to home, you want to give up things, you want to let go of things, and you are practicing vipassana. So how these conflicting states are, balancing in the mind? That's what we need to understand. So there are, you might have to use certain other alternatives, maybe maintaining a diary, maybe using the reminders in your phone, etc. You can make use of, but rather than, I don't like to interfere the vipassana process because the we get stressed up because of too much information in the mind. So today, because of the information technology, we are gathering so much of unnecessary things. It may be necessary for us to live in this world, in this conventional world. We need certain amount of information to live, but not much. And actually, we can use various devices to make our lives more comfortable. And rather than storing things in our mind, we don't need to store up things in the mind, unnecessary things in the mind. Now, say, for example, if you consider your house, are you picking all the garbage which is available in outside and take you inside the house? No. We are taking only what is necessary, only what is important, and then storing in our house. But are we such selective in our typical mental operation? No. Typically, we are all gathering so much of information, a lot of unnecessary information, and gathering and storing in our mind. So we are not much selective in putting or stuffing in our mind. And so if we understand that theory, then we may be careful about what we are putting inside our mind.
Thank you, Venerable Thero. I think Venerable Vajirarame Jnanasiha Thero is here with us. Venerable Thero, you have any questions or comments you would like to make? You need to unmute Venerable Thero.
I think, no, in the morning I wanted to know about this particular aspect, and I'm very happy to be a part of the Chandra and speaking on this particular subject, because I was going through a particular sutta that is the what do you call the in the Panya, Adi Brahmacharya Panya Sutta. And there in the last factor on meditation, they were mentioning of it was mentioned about the Upadana Khanda, and we should understand, as was mentioned in that the Rupa, then there is the Rupa Samudaya and Rupa, the final getting away of it. So this was something in my mind I want more. And I'm so happy to listen to Venerable Chandraratna Thero and get some clarifications. But this means that I have to study more. That's all that I could say. I have read so many suttas are mentioned here. I have to read them, I have to study them, and it's the process of studying. So, Venerable Sir, I'm very thankful for you. And it came just at the proper time, because I was thinking of this in the morning, and today I have it. Thank you very much, Venerable Sir.
Yeah, Thiran Sanai, you're welcome.
There are, Dr. Bandula, you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, two things came to my mind. One is when it comes to the animitta, mukha and the samadhi, so the mind becomes aloof from the sanya and upwards, like rupa vedana sanya, right? Can you hear me?
I didn't get your question properly.
when it becomes the Animitta Mukha and the Animitta Samadhi, the mind is aloof from the Rupa, Vedana and Sanya states. It is Sankhara, also not Sankhara and Vijnana. But
Yeah, actually Sankharas are also very much like calm down, because signs are quite necessary for us to think. So Sanya Nidanahi Papancha Sankha. So basically the signs are a very essential part in our thinking process, in our proliferation particularly. So signs play a pivotal role in the proliferation process, the conceptual proliferation process, too much thinking process. But when we are unable to pick the signs, so this thinking also become less and less. So almost like you are able to stop thinking.
So it's aloof
So
from
the mind has
Sankhara
become
also.
fairly silent. Yes, mind has become fairly silent, almost like no thinking.
Okay. But at the same time, you should be able to recognize those 5 factors as well, right? Recognize in the sense of to understand, to go beyond the samadhi to understanding, there must be some way of knowing those 5 as 5 activities, right?
That's the thing. That's the
Come to
point.
the Vimukti stage.
Yeah, that's the thing. Now, it's very much like one may be living at 2 worlds. Say, for example, now if I give a simple simile, say you talk about a tortoise. Now, it can live in the water as well as it can live in the land. So similarly, the yogi can live in the signless state, and similarly, he can step back and pick the signs if necessary. He can recognize as well. But the recognition does not pollute the mind. It does not very much like disturb the mind. Without disturbing, he can maintain a very subtle level of recognition. Now, say, for example, to Bahir, when the Buddha advised, ditte ditta matta bhavissati. So you see things and you can recognize things, but still no proliferation, no talking, no inner chatter, no pollution happening at the mind, but still the knowing part is there. Similarly, sute sutta matta. So you can hear things, but mind maintain its clarity, mind maintain its calmness, its lucidity, maybe it's spacious, so that understanding is not disturbed, even though the sounds are heard. So different another level of understanding that the yogi may be handling here. Ditte ditta mattam, sute sutta mattam, mute mute mattam, viññāte viññāta mattam. Even though seeing is there, there is no person being created, there is no any proliferation being made, no inner chatter, mind maintains a very calm, relaxed state. Same thing during the hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and when even thoughts happen.
And the other thing, I think in the Godatta Sutta, Buddha mentions about falling from the Animitta Samadhi for a person who has established in Animitta Samadhi.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that one?
Sure, definitely. Yeah, that's why I mentioned that the not only in the Godatta Sutta, maybe in another sutta, what we call the Chittahati Sariputta Sutta. They are also Venerable Mahakottita says one can even fall back from Animitta. That's why we need to be careful. We shouldn't take it kind of a granted that I have achieved this and that and I am an arahant now. We can't give such kind of a overestimation even when one is handling the Animitta state, because still the what we call the defilements may be available. So that's why further and further inner reflections are need to be carried out so that the subtle defilements are able to retrieve. So as you mentioned, there is a possibility of stepping out of the Animitta state and ultimately can go through a kind of a significant downfall. But typically, according to the suttas, it can happen only at the earlier stages of the animitta, not at a very mature stage. So if one is continuing the practice and step into a fairly matured state, one has to go through a thorough understanding about the things, and then things are very almost like irreversible.
So just to confirm, in the
Thank you,
Bodhisattva, when
Dr.
it refers
Bandula.
to
Now,
the...
no, Dr. Bandula, we have to take now the questions.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, we'll take it later. Okay,
No
with
problem.
time is there. Venerable Thero, I'll just go through the Q&A.
Right.
There are a few questions that anonymous attendee. Thank you, Bante, for the very informative Dhamma talk. How do we connect Vijnana to this process, please?
Yeah. So actually, we need to understand that the Vijnana is using the form aggregate, feeling aggregate, and then the perceptions aggregates and the sankhara aggregate to manifest. So Vijnana alone can't handle things. So Rupa Upayangva Bhikkhave Vijnanam Tittamanam Tittaye. Rupa Rammanam, Rupa Patittang, Nandupa Sechanam, Vudding, Virulhing, Vepullang Apajjaye. You can refer Kanda Sangyutta Upaya Sutta, where Buddha clearly mentioned the consciousness depends on the form aggregate, consciousness depends on the feeling aggregate, consciousness completely established maybe on the perceptions aggregate, or it may establish on the formations aggregate. Now, during the Vipassana process, actually what happens is, so this dependency is very much like broken. Now, say for example, consciousness is depend on the feeling aggregate, and feelings are utterly grasped, and feeling aggregate become the home to the consciousness aggregate. But because of the Vipassana practice, this consciousness become homeless. Aniketasari. Previously, it was Niketasari, the one which is associating the home, but later it become Aniketasari, has no home. So similarly, so if it lose the form aggregate, lose the formations aggregate, perceptions aggregate, and the feeling aggregate, ultimately consciousness become unestablished. What we call the appatittita vijnana, unestablished consciousness, and it doesn't show anything in the consciousness. So that is why it is called what we call the anidassana vijnana, where nothing is shown in the mind. So mind become completely transparent like. So you can refer certain suttas like the Kevadda Sutta, where Buddha beautifully mentioned Vijnanang anidassanang anantan sabbato pabang yatta pocha patavi tejo vayo nagadati. So where all these form related characteristics are not finding any footing there. So the mind become completely luminous, and the consciousness become unestablished. It becomes appatittita vijnana and anidassana vijnana.
Thank you, Venerable. Question from Su Wu. Venerable, when one is in signless state, does one found only knowing mind remains, body disappeared, all senses disappear. It is very bright, borderless, and expansive.
Yeah, fairly correct. Yeah, because I mean, if you are in a fairly a deep concentration level, so this is possible. Because the signless state also we need to discuss based on the depth of the concentration. At the beginning, you are using certain amount of deep concentration to maintain the signless state, because there is a significant influence coming from the defilements. So as a result of that, you need fair amount of concentration to suppress the defilement. So you are in a deep concentration, but in the animitta. But as you are able to weaken the defilements and maybe even cut off the defilements, now you don't need such a deep concentration. Even at a shallow concentration, you may be able to maintain the signless state. But still, as you mentioned, it is open. It is not a concentration, but we can say it's an opening of the mind. So typically concentration indicates your mind is very much like focused onto something. But here at the Animitta Cheto Vimutti indicates that opening of the heart, opening of the mind. So the kindness state is developing towards the opening of the heart. So Animita Cheto Vimutti means it becomes now boundless, complete opening up of the mind.
Thank you, Venerable. Question from anonymous attendee. Venerable Swamin Wahansa, much merit to you for explaining this difficult subject so well. Is Appana Hita, what a yogi develops first before the Animita state, or is a momentarily Animita state?
Yeah, these are three stages actually. Typically, according to the Dhamma, we can come with 3 doors. Now, I have explained only 1 door. There are 2 more doors available. So, I have explained the Animitta side, that is the Animitta Vimokha Mukha, signless liberation of the mind, signless freedom of the mind. But some may be familiar or more, say, accustomed towards the dukkha, the suffering part. So there, typically it becomes desireless, what we call the appanihita. That is, now say for example, you understand things are quickly coming and going, arising and passing away, things are impermanent, then probably you get another kind of a view thinking, okay, if things are quickly arising and passing away, what a suffering it is, what a torture it is utterly suffering. Now you get the understanding of the suffering, the dukkha part. So even if you desire future, what you get is the suffering. So there is no point of desiring things. What we call the desireless, appanihita. So because you understand the impermanence, and because of impermanence, you understand the dukkha, the suffering. Things are impermanent because it's subjected to continuous torture of this impermanence. So you feel it is utter suffering. And you understand the dukkha. As a result of that, you are not desiring things. Now mind get liberated, mind get freed. So I can say therefore first animita and then maybe apanihita. Yeah.
Thank you, Bante. Another one from an anonymous attendee, Suki Hutu Bante. When and how do we switch our meditation practice from samatha, example breathing, to vipassana, please?
Yeah, actually it depends on how you have taken the approach, because sometimes say when you practice breathing meditation, anapanasati, say you rather than investing some time to recognize characteristics of breathing, sometimes people simply keep the mind at a superficial level. You are maintaining your attention at the nostril without knowing things, you simply maintain it there. Okay, in breath happens, out breath happens, in breath happens, out breath happens. You are simply maintaining your attention there at the nostril, but you are not into the clearly comprehending things. Now you are getting into the samatha approach, because you are not introducing the vipassana part, or we are not introducing the clear comprehension, but rather you are simply trying to develop the concentration, develop the samadhi while maintaining your attention at the nostril and developing concentration using this mindfulness of breathing. But as you said, so probably you can do a little bit of, once you are able to have a fair amount of mindfulness established, better introduce clear comprehension. Understand from which nostril the in-breath happens, from which nostril the out-breath happens, where this breath is touching, whether it is long or short, whether you are experiencing the beginning, the middle, the end. So likewise, a certain amount of investigation is better to introduce. Then actually we are introducing certain amount of wisdom as well. So therefore, it depends on the yogi, and you need to share your experience. Then we can say, okay, now it's the time to introduce this. Otherwise, probably you can simply maintain certain amount of mindfulness to establish mindfulness.
Thank you, Venerable. The next question, is it necessary to have guidance from an experienced teacher, since we are dealing with deep mindful state?
Actually, for typical mindfulness practices, things are quite straightforward, and the mindfulness practices are also quite simple. Techniques are available. But once you step into Vipassana, maybe it's better to have some guidance.
Question from Sriyani Batuitage. Venerable Bhante, how do we know that you are Animitta, Cheto Vimukti, not in Bhavanga Chitta?
Yeah, a good question. Now, Bhavanga is a later introduction to the Buddhist teachings, where you introduce what we call almost like a sleeping state to the mind. So it's a kind of an unconscious state, a kind of a sleeping state. But in the signless state, Animitta, you are completely attentive. So you are very sharp. You have sharp mindfulness while you are at the signless state. So a huge difference is there between the signless state and the Bhavanga state.
Then there is another question. Is the end result the elimination of Sakkaya Ditta?
Not only that, I mean, the signless state one can use to overcome all the fetters. Not only Sakkaya Ditti. That's why I emphasize even Buddha recommends Animitta Samadhi even to overcome the upper fetters. Not only Sakkaya Ditti. Now, Sakkaya Ditti comes under the lower fetters, Orambhagi Sangha. But the conceit comes under the Uddhambhagi Sangha. So all the fetters are capable of uproot if one is practicing signless state.
There is another question from Suvu. Venerable, what is the difference between Sunyata and Animitta?
Yeah, that's why the one can step into Animitta and further develop it. And later there seems to be a kind of a merge between Animitta and Sunyata. So that's what the typical suttas are revealing. You can read the Chula Sunyata Sutta. So Buddha introduced Animitta in the middle, but end up with the Sunyata. So actually there's a quite coincidence here, kind of a overlapping happens. I mean, either you step into signless and go through the development, anyway you are using it to overcome the defilements. If you step into anatta, the non-self, and as a result of that step into the emptiness, then that also another path one can develop, giving emphasis to the emptiness. Now, anyway, further and further, you are eradicating the defilements, purifying the mind. Now, there seems to be a kind of a merging between the signless Cheto Vimutti and the Sunyata Cheto Vimutti. So, very much like assume that when one becomes an Arahant, it seems, as far as the suttas are concerned, it seems like there's a kind of an overlapping, kind of merging of these three.
There is one question there. They are seeking advice. Venerable Sir, I am at the early stages of practicing meditation. My question is therefore, as a novice, I am seeing colors and geometric shapes, but I cannot proceed from this state. Is there any advice I may receive on how to proceed?
Yeah, better start introducing clear comprehension into your practice. Now, Anapanasati, as I mentioned, sometimes produce fair amount of concentration. And as we develop the concentration, these different nimittas can happen. Actually, it is a sign of the concentration, early signs of the concentration, what you have gained. So different colors may be happening and different lights can happen. And these are certain early signs of the nimitta. But later, if you are continuing the similar practice, samatha practice, probably this nimitta becomes stable, and if it is a light, it can become more brighter, and there you can use it for absorptions, the jhana practice. But rather than going purely on the samatha approach, better introduce certain amount of clear comprehension, so that we are introducing wisdom part as well, as I explained in the previous occasion also. Now try to understand, while you practice Anapanasati, so from which nostril this in-breath is happening. From which nostril the out-breath is happening? Where is it touching? Whether in-breath is longer than the out-breath. What are the differences between the in-breath and the out-breath? So likewise, now you are introducing certain amount of investigation into the picture. You also manasikara into the picture. Now very much like you are practicing Yuganadha, where certain amount of tranquility part is also there, certain amount of vipassana part is also there.
Thank you, Venerable. Senaka, you have any questions or comments you like to make? Senaka Sama is in Canada, Venerable.
Was listening your Dhamma discussions weekly, 8 p.m. Saturdays. And you would explain everything about today. You explained the details about as you were discussing with our weekly sessions with the diagram. That's very clearly explained. And at the same time, signless state is explained with those usual diagrams that will help us to go to the details of the explanation. At the same time, I want to thank you for educating us.
Yeah, Sanai.
Thank you. Thank you, Senaka. But, Dr. Dilsiri, you have any questions or clarifications you would like to make? Is muted. Right. Kamal, are you all right?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Sorry.
Yes.
Venerable sir, I just want to thank you very much for this very profound and easier to understand talk today, but also to say that your sessions on a Sunday morning that you give for the mindfulness practice for young adults as often as I can, and also your introduction to concept and reality. The principles are very, very useful for all of us. And your ability to make these beautiful diagrams, I make things into boxes and put, is one of the things which I think for people who have been studying science, we find it very easy to follow the flow charts. So you're based in Sri Lanka. These programs come from Australia on a Sunday morning, and I live in England. But all over the world, we are connected, and so I'm deeply grateful for the understanding of this concept, particularly the three states that you spoke of, the Animitta, the Apanihita, and the Sunya, the Ceto Vibhakti. Thank you very much. And may you
welcome.
Liberation in this life itself.
You too, Sanai.
Dr. Dilsiri is based in the UK, and she is one of our regular Dhamma friends who attends the sessions. And I think she's listening to Venerable Thero sessions. I think something it conducts in Australia, which
There's a program that goes in Eastern Australian time, beautifully done by the young adults there. And Bhante gives that session. It's a 2-hour session in the morning. For us, I think in Sri Lanka, it comes at a particular time. It's in the evening in Australia. And there's not only there's meditation, there's walking meditation and sitting meditation and a Dhamma talk, and it's priceless.
Right, thank you. Kamal, would you like to pay merit to Venerable Thero? I hope your sound is all right, although you're outstation. I think his problem is on the sound. Kamal, are you there or you?
I'm here, Lakshman. I'm here. So once again, it's very, very nice to have Venerable Panadure Chandranatna Thero with us here for the International Dhamma program. And your sermon today was very, very enlightening. A bit for laymen like us, we need to go a bit more further into the Dhamma to appreciate what you have said. And once again, we are very, very grateful for what you have presented on the spreadsheet as Dr. Gilsiri just mentioned. We are fortunate. Today is a very important day in Sri Lanka. Being the Poya day and a historic election results are coming out. And so it's very auspicious and we are very thankful for your time. Today we had over 160 participants, venerables, bhikkhunis, and various important participants from all over the world. So we are very grateful once again for your talk and wish to see you participating in the International Dhamma program again in the future. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kamal. Thank you very much, Venerable Thero. We pay much merit to you because I know that you are always so busy, but certainly you've been able to make the time available to conduct our Dhamma program, which at least one program per annum that we are doing. We are very thankful to you. And as mentioned by Dr. Dilasiri also, that it's not only those who are in Sri Lanka, but those who are abroad, who not only listen by maybe the online system of the webinars, but I think they also anxiously await Venerable Thero's visits to these countries, which helps them, especially in the mindfulness and meditation area. So once again, let me pay much merit to Venerable Thero, and if Venerable Thero can pay merit to the gods and the departed, we can close the session. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, today we had many Dhamma friends and venerables gathered, and we were able to listen some Dhamma, share our insights, and were able to accumulate fair amount of merits. So we'll share these merits with all the celestial beings, all the past relatives, and whoever in need of merits. And we wish these merits help us also to attain path, fruition, nibbana, and we'll recite the traditional verses. Ettavata cha amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhiya. Ettavata cha amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhiya. Ettavata cha amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhiya. Akasattha ca buම්මට්ඨා දේවා නාග මහිද්దిකා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු ශාසනං. ආකාසට්ඨා ච බුම්මට්ඨා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු දේශනං. ආකාසට්ඨා ච බුම්මට්ඨා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරං රක්ඛන්තු මම් පරං. Idang wo nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idang wo nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idang wo nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yava nibbana pattiya. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yava nibbana pattiya. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yava nibbana pattiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, and much merit to you, Venerable Thero. So we will now thank you very much, and stop.